John Garcia, I hope you're doing well. Welcome into the game.
Always good to be back, my friend. Big week, of course, and a big day for Bama already, landing commitment Nigel Knott, and I think this is the beginning of quite the role, and pun intended, for Bama here in the next 48 hours.
Yeah, let's talk about Nigel Knott here for a couple of minutes. You've had a chance to watch this young man go through this recruiting process. How big of a get was it for Alabama?
This is big. I mean, no matter how you slice it, it's big. One, you get a commitment from a kid from the state of Mississippi, which is something Bama has struggled to do and to sign on Wednesday. And obviously, we're so close that he is expected to sign with Alabama. So that alone is big for Bama. Positionally, a cornerback. Bama has no cornerbacks committed or had none prior to him committing. So that's big in and of itself as well. You pull a legacy prospect away from Ole Miss. Again, it's big no matter how you slice it. This is a freak athlete. He's not the biggest cornerback, but tests off the charts. Sub-4 laser 40 time, can jump out the gym, has long arms. He does a lot to compensate for his lack of size. And, of course, he'll add some bulk once he gets to Tuscaloosa. So this is a great get for Alabama, a guy who can help you in special teams as a returner, covering kicks, and, of course, as a cornerback on defense.
We are talking to John Garcia right now inside the game. Alabama is like at the Kentucky Derby coming around, the final turn, or maybe the third and then the final turn. We're close to National Signing Day. Right now they've got 17 verbal commitments, some early enrollees, which would count as already signees, I guess, if that's what really once you look at it. How will this Crimson Tide team finish up as far as National Signing Day?
It's going to be a big finish, Ryan. Right now, Bama on the outside of the top 5 nationally, but it will be closer to number 1, if not number 1, 48 hours from right now. Alabama's in line for a lot of kids late in the process. In-state, you've got the top 2 prospects in the state on Scout.com, Ben Davis, Mac Wilson, both of them at this point expected to end up in Alabama's class, though certainly it's not over just yet. And then Alabama in it for more Mississippi kids. A.J. Brown, a top wide receiver. Jeff Simmons, the number 1 overall player in Mississippi. You continue going out of state. Guys like Terrell Hall, Irvin Smith, Jared Maiden. There's plenty of guys nationally that still have Bama very, very high on the list. So, like you said, Bama's in the teens right now. It'll be in the 20s, closer to 25 or more come National Signing Day, once those LOIs start being faxed in digitally, usually, to Tuscaloosa. So, big finish ahead for Alabama. Again, still a very clear shot at number 1 if certain cards go their way.
Miguel Juarez, coming out of California, Torrance, California, outside linebacker. It seems like his name was a buzz at one point. Is it still there? Possible?
Sure, it's possible. Absolutely. This is a 5-star kid, top 10 player in the entire country. The question is going to be very, very simple with him. Do you stay home, or do you venture all the way down to SEC country? And that's really plain and simple, black and white for him. BYU is who hosted him this past weekend. People don't think they're very much of a threat. It's more of UCLA if he wants to stay home. There's a great pipeline from that area to UCLA, of course, in-state school. UCLA I thought to have been the favorite for a very, very long time. However, this fall, he took trips to Ole Miss and to Alabama. Both of them sort of blew him away, the SEC culture, the football culture. And let's be honest, the kid's a linebacker. So you think of SEC defense as linebackers, one of the first things that pop into your mind. So that is very, very appealing to him. But again, the question is, in the 11th hour, mom and dad sitting down, are all 3 of you on board with your son going all the way to Tuscaloosa or to Oxford? So still on the table. He has not made a private decision just yet. It's just hard to imagine that at the 11th hour everybody would be in agreement on Alabama, but certainly the race is not over for one of the best in the country.
Let's go back to Riley Cole for just a couple of seconds. Gray Shirt, we hear that coming out this weekend. He puts out that he wants to go to a school of value. He decommits from Alabama. What immediately goes – but see, I have to take this under consideration. You know a lot more about this recruiting process than I do. But what goes through your mind when you hear a player getting offered a gray shirt, that they just don't have enough numbers left?
Yeah, it's a numbers thing. It's a scholarship thing. It's a positional thing. We mentioned linebackers, and 3 of the guys we've already talked about are all at the same inside linebacker position that Riley Cole was projected to play at Alabama. So you have a big group of commitments. You mentioned the 8 early enrollees already on campus. So the numbers, although Bama will still add many commitments publicly, privately, the numbers are much more tighter than that. Bama knows, for the most part, a good chunk of the kids it's going to add. So because of that, the question was asked to him if he was open to a gray shirt, and that's what Christian Bell did last year. Basically, you just delay your enrollment 6 months or so. So instead of coming in May or June, you come in January of the following year. So essentially, you stay home and take a de facto redshirt year, although you don't lose the eligibility. So some people actually view it as a positive. However, obviously, Riley did not. He ended up backing off of the Alabama commitment when the discussion of a gray shirt came up. That's how I understood it. He was not told gray shirt or nothing from Alabama, so no scholarship being told, things like that. I know a lot of people blew it out of proportion a little bit yesterday on Twitter, and that's fine. That happens. It's very late in the process for anything like that to go down, so you sort of expect that. But he'll land on his feet. Oklahoma offered him last night. A bunch of ACC schools have been in contact with him as well. So he'll be just fine, and he'll be a scholarship player somewhere, and then probably a good one down the road here coming up this fall or into the summer while he'll move in instead of starting his Alabama career in January. It's just one of those things that's it's a number situation, and some people are okay with it and some people are not. So it kind of is what it is in my book.
17 right now, verbal and early enrollees. What number do you think they'll end up at?
I think 25 will be the baseline, so I think it could even get up to 26, depending on a couple of guys late. You mentioned Mike Juarez. Can't imagine Alabama saying no thanks to a kid like that. A.J. Brown, Jeff Simmons out of Mississippi. If Bama can surprisingly land one of those two guys, you're not going to say no to those guys as well. And again, a bunch of the other guys that we mentioned who are almost expected to end up in Tuscaloosa. So the safe number is 24, 25, but if Saban closes as well as he has in the past, it could exceed 25, and that's where it gets tricky. That's where the numbers often get skewed a little bit, and things have to happen, which is a portion of what happened with Riley Cole.
So you're thinking at least 8 will verbally commit and then sign with Alabama in the next couple of days?
Yeah, it could be that big, Ryan. Now, there's always the grand scheme of things where you determine based on the guys who are still available positionally, should we get a fourth receiver when 3 receivers are already committed and things like that. When you get closer to the nitty-gritty, the morning of Wednesday, possibly 1 or 2 of those numbers could be switched around, and Nick Saban may say, hey, let's save that scholarship for the 2017 class, which is something we've seen done in the past. But again, a good chunk of kids are going to be added, at least 6 or 7, up to 8 or more. Again, a massive finish ahead for Alabama.
All right, so let me go to Tulsa, Oklahoma. The running back out there, and I forget his name, that was a possibility that came on late. What are we hearing coming out of Tulsa, Oklahoma?
Yeah, Josh Jacobs, a kid who's, for lack of a better comparison, you think of LaShawn McCoy in terms of the skill set. Very small, shifty, great top-end speed, excellent vision, catch balls out of the backfield, kick returner, the whole thing there. Kenyon Drake type, if you will. Very good visit to Alabama. Does have that firm scholarship offer. It looks like Bama will look to add one more running back. It'll be either him or Devon Penniman, who's currently committed to Ole Miss, and he is expected to make his final decision between Ole Miss, Alabama, and Texas A&M tonight. We're hearing around 8 or 8:15 Central Standard Time. So if Penniman chooses to go elsewhere, which is the expectation right now, Texas A&M, Ole Miss being the front runners there, then Josh Jacobs comes into sort of a hyper-focus for Alabama. But I'm told the expectation is that he is one of the guys that I would pencil in today if I had to mock up this class of 2016 for Alabama.
Wow, what a class. We're talking to John Garcia, BamaMag.com, Scout.com, recruiting analyst, currently in New York City as we're talking about the University of Alabama National Signing Day. Let me just ask a couple of generic recruiting questions before we wrap up the conversation. Knowing what you know about recruiting, would you support an early signing period? Would you be for it?
I would. I think there's a certain element to establishing a relationship with a kid early on, and some of these kids, they know from so young, as you know, Ryan, if Bama offers me, I'm going to Bama. Your in-state guys, your guys like in this class, T.J. Simmons, Deontay Brown, a lot of these guys, they could have signed in November, and it wouldn't have been that big of a deal. Now, the argument against it is for the late emergers. So if you have an early signing period, maybe a Josh Jacobs type of story doesn't even happen for schools like Alabama and Oklahoma and Ohio State that are now in on him because maybe they filled up at the running back position, or numbers-wise, they can't squeeze out one additional scholarship in the final week of the signing day period. So I think there's arguments for both sides, but I think a small window for long-time commits or in-state commits would make a lot of sense. It would clear up a lot of the drama with those kids, and for a guy like Riley Cole, would have got him in this class at Alabama. So I see both sides to it. I lean towards yes, but I could certainly see the other side of the equation.
How about on the other side of increasing this number from 85 to, let's go, 90? We're playing more games in college football now because of recruiting services, because of able to sort of spread that footprint out. You're able to identify more people that
Absolutely.
should be playing in college programs. You think we'll see an increase at some point? Let's just say in the next 10 years. Could we get to 90?
I think you have to. Yeah, I think you have to. You almost look at it like the college football playoff. It's at 4 right now, and I don't think there's anybody in the world who thinks it's going to stay at 4 for the next 20 years. So you assume, okay, you're eventually going to go to maybe 8 or possibly more than that. I think it's the same thing with scholarships. You know, they used to not even regulate scholarships. Now that they have put a number on it, I think eventually you'll see that number grow up. Like you said, Ryan, you're playing more games. These kids are more ready to play day one on campus. There's more transfers. There's more graduate transfers. So there's so much more turnover than we have really ever seen in college football. So I think that's a great almost excuse to add more scholarships to it. But I think the most literal one is what you said, more football games. And if you add more playoff games, that's a whole other round or two of games that we're not even available to discuss right now. So I think you're never going to play less games than you are right now. So all the more reason to get more bodies in there and more scholarship bodies, because as we all know, there's a big difference.
Just with what we know, with the NCAA taking a closer look at what's happening in Oxford, Mississippi, whether that involves, we really don't know. I mean, nobody will talk. The NCAA doesn't talk. The SEC doesn't talk. Ole Miss doesn't talk. We just know that they're looking into that program. Does that hurt them on the recruiting front?
Not so much, Ryan. I think, luckily for Ole Miss, it went down, I believe, Friday, with a bunch of top recruits in town. A lot of the guys we've mentioned today in town. So that afforded Hugh Freeze the opportunity to sort of say, hey, look, this is what's going on, and this is what you need to know going forward. And based on our Ole Miss affiliate on Scout.com, Ole Miss Spirit, they said there was really only 1 or 2 kids out of the entire, 24 visitors who even asked about it. So it's almost part of recruiting nowadays. It's almost part of the process nowadays. You expect the NCAA to eventually poke its head around your program, and it's sort of sad in a sense, but I don't think it really hurts people as much as maybe a casual football fan would assume, like, well, Ole Miss has something coming. We don't know what, we don't know when, we don't know for how long, but something is coming, so that'll steer kids away. I think a lame duck coach like Al Golden at Miami last year probably steers kids away much, much more than potential sanctions and potentially not playing for a championship years down the road. It's so much of a hypothetical and a theoretical situation that I don't think it affects as much as people lead on.
I've asked you this question before, but it goes along with the conversation that we're having today. What is Nick Saban selling? What is that number one thing that he's selling? Is it NFL? Is it trophies? Is it player development? What is that number one thing that Nick Saban, when he goes into a living room, he's trying to convince a recruit that they have in Tuscaloosa that's better than the rest?
It used to be those things, in my opinion, but now the most common, theme, I guess, when I talk to recruits is that they're selling the on and off the field benefit of coming to a place like Alabama. Of course you're going to win. Of course you're going to win a national title. Every one of his 4-year classes has won a national title. He doesn't have to sell those things anymore. They sell themselves, and the NFL certainly goes along with that. He's selling becoming a man within this locker room and becoming a better man outside of it because you were in this locker room, if that makes sense. They're pushing education a lot more. They're pushing the human element much more at Alabama. And it makes sense because you don't have to focus on winning and the tangibles of football because all of those are pretty much in front of you. If you go on your phone or go on Google or anything like that, turn on television, you're going to be force-fed that. So there's no need for them to sit down and say, hey, we had Trent Richardson and Eddie Lacy and Mark Ingram and all that stuff. They don't have to do that, so they sort of go to the next layer, which is very rare in today's recruiting. Most of it is about football. It is about the NFL. It is about your degree. But Bama and Nick Saban, they sell human growth, if anything.
John, you just got my attention. I'm sorry, I'm gonna run maybe a minute late here. I asked you for 15 minutes. I'm at 14:28. We're talking to John Garcia, BamaMag.com. You just really intrigued me with that because I've never even thought about what you just said. I mean, they're really selling that. I mean, that they're selling, and that's it. Now that may be not appealing to us as people who cover college football. I mean, it's appealing, but that appeals to me, to the parents. I mean, if I'm sitting in the living room and I hear a coach say, you send my son to Alabama, I'm going to make him a better man. That's like, sign him up.
Exactly, because you can get a degree anywhere, and academics certainly very, very important in this. And football is very important in this, but you can also get that anywhere. And again, the winning sells itself. So if you sell being a better man and you have people who prove that, let's be honest, coaches recruit, but it's really about those current players. Those are the living, breathing examples who are around you at the same time. Those are the things that they have been selling to fellow recruits and fellow prospects. And that's what's resonated a lot in this class. That's why you haven't seen a lot of public stunts and things like that from the kids' perspective. I think that's because the theme has changed, and certainly it's easier for Bama to sell. But as Dean Smith used to say it, Nick Saban can say it now too. We'll win with you or without you. So why don't you come here and become a better man, get your education, and maybe contribute to a national title team?
Well, when you go back and you talk about this team leadership from this year's team, we thought it was exceptional. It was fun to cover. I mean, it was fun to, as a media guy, you almost got sucked in because you were pulling for the good guys, right? And it seems like now that's part of the evaluation that Nick Saban is using. Is he goes, hey, one guy can disrupt my locker room. One guy can make the difference between winning a national title and not winning a national title.
Exactly, and it resonates with the players who even decide to leave. Look at a guy like Chris Black. I mean, there's not many more guys, liked more than him on the team, and everybody sends him out with such a positive, roll tide, even though he's going to an in-conference school in Missouri, which he announced today. I think even that sort of stuff resonates with people, just seeing sort of the culture at Alabama, not just about wins and losses, although on the scheme of things and on the top of the list, certainly that's easy to identify, but it seems like it's about more than that. And like you said, you saw that a lot this year.
John, let me give you a chance. I'm going to throw you a minute plug here. Tell us about what's going to be happening on Bama Mag and then Scout.com, and then give us a little tease of what you're doing, working on in New York City.
Oh, yeah, we've got big plans for Wednesday, National Signing Day. Ryan, how about 12 hours straight live streamed coverage, not only on Scout.com, but on Sports Illustrated, not only with Scout.com host and recruiting analysts, but we're going to bring in Sports Illustrated national college football analysts as well. We're going to tie it all together. So we're going to go recruiting to player development to the current college football product, and you're going to get every aspect of that on National Signing Day, 100% free, 100% streamed. You can minimize that bad boy at work and listen to us. We're going to have a ton of coaching interviews. I'll give you a sneak peek. We've got Urban Meyer lined up. We've got Jim Harbaugh lined up. There's a great group of coaches that are going to join us. We're going to talk about everything you need to know about each of these programs. And Ryan, I'm here, so there's going to be plenty of Alabama conversation as well. So if you have some time, check out Scout.com and SportsIllustrated.com on National Signing Day. It will be quite the show, something unprecedented and unrivaled in our industry.
John Garcia _JR, John Garcia Jr. helping us out, BamaMag.com. John, thanks for stepping in the batter's box and knocking it completely out of the park, man. Thanks again for being a part of the show.
Anytime, Ryan. Thanks for having me.